In this video, we will show you how to replace your front strut assembly. On this Ford Flex, you'll have one of these located on each side in the front of your vehicle. Let's get into it. Okay friends, let's get started on our job. The first thing you want to do is safely raise and support the front of your vehicle so the wheel's off the ground with the suspension hanging. Once you've done that, continue on to removing all 5 of your 19mm lug nuts and then the wheel. Now that we have the wheel out of the way, we have a nice clear view of our front strut assembly. Let's start by removing our 21mm nut that holds the sway bar link to the front strut. Now we can go ahead and grab onto that, give it a little tug, and remove it from the strut. With that sway bar link out of the way, let's continue on just a little lower than it. You're going to find the ABS wire. Grab onto that, give it a little wiggle, and dislodge it. Make sure it's not broken or damaged in any way. We can set that aside and follow it down a little further. To remove this, you can use a trim tool or small prying device. We'll carefully get in this area and gently try to separate it. It's best if you do not break this clip because you will want to reuse it. There we are. You just want to make sure that it is still reusable, and we can set that ABS wire aside. Let's follow it up here to where it connects onto the body of the vehicle. We'll slide that out of place as well. Make your way to your axle nut. We'll use a 32mm socket to remove this, and then a hammer and punch to break the axle free from the wheel bearing. Once you have that broken free, let's continue on to the 2 mounting bolts that hold the steering knuckle to the strut. To remove each one of these bolts, we'll use a 24mm to hold the bolt head and another 24mm to remove each of the mounting nuts. We'll use a hammer to break this free. Leave that in there for now. Make your way down to the lower bolt and do the same thing. Now we can remove each of these mounting bolts. When you do it, you might just have to wiggle this around a little bit. But be extremely careful. When this does come down, it's going to want to come down outward towards you. You want to make sure that you don't damage your axle by pulling this down. So make sure that the axle pushes through the wheel bearing. Inspect those mounting bolts. As you continue, you will be reusing them. Now we can separate this. Let this come down a little bit. Now let's make our way up into the engine compartment and start removing our 4 15mm nuts that hold the strut to the strut tower. Be careful on your last nut because you want to make sure you're holding the strut at the same time. I'll loosen this one as much as possible, but leave it on a couple threads and fully remove the other 3. Now that I have those 3 nuts removed and one still left in place, I'll reach down with one hand into the wheel well and hold onto the strut while I remove this last nut, and then we can pull it out of the wheel well. There it is, friends. Okay, friends, let's get ready to install that brand new front strut. While we put this in place, we want to make sure that we have each of our 4 studs lined up with the top holes up inside the engine compartment. There we are. Start on each of your 4 mounting nuts. Once we have these on here, we're going to pause up top, make our way down into the wheel well. Now back in the wheel well, let's continue on with mounting our knuckle to the strut. When you're doing this, it's common to have to push this in and down at the same time to get it lined up. If you have a hard time pushing this down, you could try using a pry bar down inside the lower control arm. Get this lower bolt in here first. Now we'll press in the upper one as well. Now we can start on each one of these mounting nuts, bottom them out, and then torque them to 129 foot-pounds. Let's continue on to our ABS wire. Resecure that to your strut. Now we'll follow this over to where it connects onto the body of the vehicle. Now we can reconnect the sway bar link to the front strut. We'll just bring this into place. If you have to, you can try to pry up or down on the sway bar to get this aligned. Install your mounting nut. Once this is on here, we'll snug it up and then torque it to 111 foot-pounds. To tighten this nut, we'll use a 21 millimeter on the nut, and we'll use a 10 millimeter for the stud of the sway bar link. If you don't have a ratcheting 21 millimeter wrench, just go ahead and hold that nut in place and use a 10 millimeter socket on your ratchet. To tighten this, you're going to want to turn the ratchet counterclockwise. Now let's make our way back down to that axle. Start that nut on there, snug it up. You never want to use an impact gun on this because if you were to over torque it in some way, you could cause damage to the wheel bearing. Now we can torque that axle nut. As you can see, I have a pry bar that comes across each one of these studs down diagonally to the ground to hold this still. If you don't want to do this, you could also have a second person inside the passenger compartment holding on that brake as hard as possible to prevent this from spinning. Let's torque this nut to 258 foot-pounds with our 32 millimeter socket. All right, at this point we can reinstall our wheel. We'll start on each one of our 19mm lug nuts, snug them up, get the wheel back on the ground, and then torque them to 100 foot-pounds. With the wheel safely back on the ground, we'll torque each of these in a crisscross manner. Torqued. Now, make your way back up into the engine compartment. With the full weight of the vehicle back down on the ground, we're going to continue on to torquing each of our 4 15mm headed mounting nuts to 46 foot-pounds. We'll bottom these out first and then torque them. Okay friends, we showed you how to install one side of your front strut assembly. When you do these, you do them as a pair. The process will be the exact same thing for the other side of the vehicle. After you've completed that, go ahead and close the hood, make your way into the passenger compartment, and take your vehicle down to your local alignment shop. Thanks for watching.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.